The second week of the Overwatch League's third stage kicked off last night with 4 very interesting and intriguing matches that brought entertainment and surprises by the bucket load. Quickly before I get started though, the reception for the Q&A video next week has been amazing so far, and be sure to keep more questions coming. Without any further delay, let's get straight into the action from its unexpected day. Opening this second week was a series between the Houston Outlaws and San Francisco Shock, with both teams having had opposite performances in their only Week 1 games. The Outlaws just came up short in an excellent display against New York, whilst the Shock unconvincingly edged out Atlanta. Therefore, this match was very important to watch in order to determine what the true quality and ability of both these sides are, even at this early part of the stage. Map 1 saw the two teams take to Nepal, and upon reflection, it gave us a very good idea at how the series would eventually pan out. The first round on Shrine saw Houston roll out on Sombra Goats with a Nana, as San Francisco stuck to their expected traditional 3-3 Goats comp. But it was the Outlaws that quickly gained momentum through the play of Linkser and the often criticised Raucus, who to his credit is actually a good Ana player. Interestingly, after losing the first fight, the Shock struggled to re-engage into Dante's Sombra, as Houston ended up dominating the first round 100-0. Then on the following round on Sanctum, the two teams faced off in a more traditional 3-3 compositions, with the exception of Muma on Wrecking Ball. Unlike the first round, the script flipped entirely, as the Shock easily levelled up the rounds. This took us to Village, where the Outlaws finally unveiled the Hackfist comp that's been gaining some traction on the back of its success, especially from Element Mystic over in Korean contenders at the Pacific Showdown. Houston would later return to Sombra Goats in the only competitive round of the map that flipped back and forth, but gradually Dante Sombra took control, and with Muma hitting a massive shatter followed by a 3k charge, they were able to win the final teamfight and give the Outlaws a surprising early 1-0 map lead in the series. Moving on to Horizon Lunar Colony, Houston attacked first with a quadruple DPS comp that slowly began to get picks and find some success, but every time it seemed like momentum was gathering, Boink on Mercy was taken out, and as their only source of healing, this derailed their attack but only managed to get just over 2 ticks on the first point as time expired. As the Shock attacked with the same Baptiste Ghost comp that they ran defensively, at first their progress was slow and struggling to break down the triple DPS Outlaws comp, with Jake finding particular success on his infamous Jake Rat. But once again, Boink ended up being picked that signalled game over for Houston, as the sustainability difference proved too much to handle as San Francisco took the point and levelled up the series. This series seemed evenly poised heading into Iconwald, where there was an interesting change made, with Dante being subbed out for Coolmat, signalling that Houston were confident going head to head with the Shock in the traditional Goats 3-3 matchup. What followed was a bloodbath, as on their attack, San Francisco completely rolled over the Outlaws' defense, completing the map with just under 4 minutes remaining. In their reply, there was a moment early on where Houston looked to potentially gather some momentum, but this was quickly shut down, and although all the Shock members were outstanding here, Sinatra stood out the most, generating and using his third Graviton Surge at the same time that Linkser had managed his second, as he was on fire, leading his team to take the map, and thus the lead in the series at 2-1. If not already clear by now, Houston were being destroyed every time they attempted to mirror the traditional 3-3 Goats comp. When they had Dante on Sombra, the Shock looked far more uncomfortable and for the most part struggled. This was best exemplified on the fourth map Havana, where Houston spawn camped the Shock with a Sombra Goats comp for 2 minutes before they finally won a teamfight and utilised this early advantage to prevent San Francisco from completing the first stage and reach the first checkpoint as time expired. The Shock just didn't appear to know how to play against Sombra, with neither support effectively being able to retaliate with their ultimates, as Choi Hyobin struggled all game from a great focus hack strategy from the Outlaws, but gained Dante a ton of ult charge and saw Choi demect early in teamfights often. Their own attack took a little bit of time, but Muma, who was utilising EMP to the fullest with Shatter, eventually hit the hammer blow that tied the series at 2-2, taking both teams to the consecutive map 5 like their matches in Week 1. But unlike last week, Houston continued their momentum with at first a Hackfist comp, then Sombra Goats, but the Shock, try as they might, could not find prolonged success or counters to, as the Outlaws picked up 2 consecutive rounds to win the map and confirm the amazing upset at 3-2. For Houston, this series has put them in an excellent position to rebound this stage after 2 impressive performances against 2 of the best teams in the league. They should know that they need to focus their play around Dante Sombra, who took the Player of the Match award, and also plays to the strength of players like Raucus, and avoid returning to traditional 3-3 that they look awful on. The Shock, meanwhile, have reached an important moment in their season. What we've seen since their victory in the Stage 2 finals is that they currently do not know how to use a victory, and have become drunk on success that they've not been able to prepare for its aftermath, with the team seemingly rather inflexible and reliant on their free goats finding success. We have seen after losing throughout Stage 1, they have been able to use a defeat, and hopefully they can use this one to recognise they need to work on playing against Sombra and showing a bit more flexibility and adaptability in their overall game. Now obviously, with the previous series stealing all the attention and headlines, as you can see by how long I talked about it, it doesn't come as a surprise that the match that followed fell under the radar, despite it being just as entertaining to watch, whilst on the whole being much more competitive throughout. In fairness, the first map wasn't as good as what was to come, as the rain effectively reacted to the Sombra goats of Shanghai to storm the first round on Oasis, before a much tighter 99-99 affair on the second round, but despite the large number of kills from the Dragons' triple DBS comp. Dako was able to find the critical kills on Tacoma's Mercy that proved to be the difference, giving Atlanta the 1-0 lead in the series. What followed in the next 3 maps was for the most part an offensive masterclass, with both sides finding so much success on their attacks, while struggling to defensively hold up for a significant period of time. With time to spare, both the Dragons and Rain completed the second map, Volsky, twice, with Shanghai utilising Ding's Sombra in a traditional 3-3 of Atlanta. What I did find interesting was how, unlike Dante against Choi, Ding wasn't really able to charge his ult off of Dako as much, who was far more perceptive to his attempts, and even caught him out a couple of times to help him defensively. In the end though, a clever switch to a defensive triple DBS comp from Shanghai made the difference, with a couple of teamfight wins that halted Atlanta at the first point, unable to match their own 5 objectives, meaning the map ended 5-4 in the Dragons' favour, thus levelling the series. This attack momentum continued into Numbani, with both teams very quickly finishing the map, with each adhering to their own preferred style. During the second round of attacks though, both sides were far more disciplined at the chokes, but with their large time bank, the Dragons were able to reach near the end of the second section. In their reply, with more time available, Atlanta were held up for much longer at the first point, but only just managed in the end to capture it. Shanghai switched off of D.Va, back onto Sombra, and inexplicably, passively let the Rain push the payload all the way to the end without any poke or dink harassment, giving Atlanta both ult and positional advantage for the final fight. This lapse in judgment and strategy proved costly, as they ended up C9ing the point from what 1 minute earlier looked to be a great spot, ended up in the Dragons losing the map by another scoreline of 5-4, finding themselves down 2-1 in the series. They responded well on map 4, Havana, with Ding proving to be the difference, with great follow-up from Gamsu and Diem, as despite not finishing the map for the first time on their own attack, they managed to hold Atlanta, who for the first time struggled to get things going for a stretch of time, as they were held up and wiped out before the end of the second section, bringing us to our second Game 5 of the day. Nepal would be the decider, and unfortunately for Atlanta fans, it followed a pretty familiar script. Shanghai had noticeably been growing into the series, and in the end, Ding Sombra edged out the first round on Village, before the Dragons controlled Sanctum with ease, thanks to the Rain failing on a pool pork comp, ultimately confirming the map for Shanghai, and thus the series for them 3-2. This continues their recent excellent run of form, but has now seen them best a team that has been giving other top teams headaches lately. Whilst for Atlanta, it's another bitter loss, as despite them playing well, and Dako particularly playing out of his mind, they just can't translate these performances into victories. And they could do with either getting over the hump soon, either against Seoul or a weaker side, in order to prevent morale plummeting. I realise that I've already spent a lot of time on the first 2 fixtures, so I'm going to be a little briefer with the other 2 that I'm going to talk about. The first being the strange series between the Dallas Fuel and Chengdu Hunters, who suffered underwhelming first weeks, and to be honest, weird is a pretty good description of this series. The Hunters were back to their more familiar comps as we started on Ilios, and ultimately, Dallas just couldn't seem to find a way of breaking them down with goats for continued periods of time, thanks in part to excellent play of Jinmu, but especially Yang Xiaolong, who on the whale round utilised a speed boost to kill AKM with a Deadeye, before hitting a huge 3-man flash stun to help his team take both rounds and an early map lead. Returning on Paris, Dallas looked a lot better with their defence taking a lot of time off the clock, before Arman hit a massive shatter but won his side the point after switching to 3-3. On their own attack, however, Dallas looked refueled as they picked apart the Hunters' first point defence with a triple DPS comp of their own, but looked like snowballing onto the second point, had Evatal not come up clutch with a 3k on Mercy using Valkyrie to save the point. But after catching Yang Xiaolong as he popped EMP, therefore negating it, they were able to take the point and the map with significant time advantage, which they used to full hold Chengdu before winning the map on their own second attack as the Hunters C9'd. It seemed like the Fuel was starting to get in control of the series, except as they came back out onto Hollywood, they looked lost facing their opponent's Sombra Goats comp that ended up finishing the map. In reply, they ran with a triple DPS comp of their own, which seemed odd and subsequently failed to gain traction as it was effectively dealt with by the Hunters, who had now taken a 2-1 lead in the series. Elsa on Sombra and D.Va quietly had a really strong series, and was one of the reasons why the final map Dorado played out in a similar fashion, with Dallas finding no consistent way to counter the Sombra, but eventually led to their downfall, as a few were wiped in their attempt to complete the map, like Chengdu, which meant the Hunters were 3-1 winners in the series. This showing just highlighted that Dallas at best were a mid-table side that really needs to develop its own identity, as when OGE is not at the top of his game, like yesterday, they struggle. For Chengdu, however, this win just demonstrates that for now, they need to just forget adjusting to a 3-3 GOATS comp full time, as it just doesn't suit their style, nor brings them success. The Hangzhou Spark closed out the day with their match versus the Vancouver Titans, and I don't think that there is honestly too much to say about this series, as it perfectly summed up where I feel both teams stand in the overall balance of power. Guxue throughout was outstanding, and was the key driving force behind any time the Spark gained success or gathered momentum. He even caused Bumper plenty of issues, but as expected from the Titans, they just looked the stronger of the two teams, with Twilight again popping off, Haxel putting in a great display on Brick, whilst Bumper, as usual, was able to consistently come up with massive earth shatters. The series ended competitively 3-1, with the Hangzhou's map win coming on horizon, thanks to a disjointed and sloppy attack from Vancouver, largely due to them running a Sombra GOATS comp, which didn't look greatly practiced, as highlighted by Xiao Min-su completely fluffing his EMP. There were moments such as on Numbani, where the Spark found themselves in really good spots to potentially take the map themselves. But in the clutch final teamfights, it was the Titans who reliably took control with important ultimates and kills to edge them out just over the line. Moreover, a great Spark spawn camp on Havana allowed them to stop Vancouver to just before the first checkpoint, but in retaliation, with their backs against the wall, again the Titans did enough, spawn camping the Spark as well, before a scuffed Ria EMP proved to be the nail in the coffin for Hangzhou, who collapsed, allowing Vancouver to hold on to win the map and thus the series 3-1. This continues Vancouver's excellent start against their third successive tough opponent. Whilst for the Spark, there were a lot of what-ifs in a display that was impressive, but showed that they need to work on some things before they can truly challenge the best. Looking at my predictions, I was relieved despite some drama to still end up with getting 2 out of the 4 results right to start out this week after my strong 12-4 display last week. I honestly think very few people thought the shock would fall to Houston, and whilst I got it wrong, it didn't come as a massive surprise that Chengdu picked up the upset victory over Dallas, as it's so typical of the Hunters and makes the feel very similar to London. As for the other 2 fixtures, I nailed them precisely, making me think my power rankings positions for all of those sides are in good shape for now. Looking ahead to tomorrow though, we could be in for even more excitement and upsets as we begin with the Paris Eternal against the New York Excelsior. And despite the Eternal looking dangerous, as well as the Excelsior finding their feet, I just think Mano & Co will come out the victors 3-2. But Toronto Defiant then play the London Spitfire, who despite their up and down last week, I expect to pick up the victory, as Toronto still looks to be finding its own synergy with its new roster, so I'm thinking 3-1. Next, the Boston Uprising face Houston Outlaws, who despite the upset, I think need to be careful not to slip up here, but I still back them against a struggling Boston side 3-1. Finally, the day wraps up with the LA Gladiators up against the Philadelphia Fusion, and to be honest, I've given up with Philly at this point, so 4-0 LA. And with that, I'd like to thank you for watching my Stage 3, Week 2, Day 1 review. I might not be able to upload tomorrow, but I'm not entirely sure yet, so I'll post that on Twitter. Otherwise, if you enjoyed, please be sure to like and subscribe for this continuing Overwatch League coverage and content, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.